I give this story in my book, but I'll relate it to you because it's such a remarkable story. We had a lady attend our program who was about to go on dialysis. She's 52. She's a nurse. You know what this shows you? That even the nurses and doctors aren't conquering these problems. She didn't want to come to our program. She rang me the night before and she said, I'm very concerned about coming to your health retreat. I said, oh, why is that? She said, well, I'm about to go on dialysis. My legs are swollen. You know why her legs are swollen? Because it is right here that sodium and fluid balances are being monitored. So if the kidneys aren't functioning properly, can you see the legs will swell? She said, my blood pressure's high. Well, it's also here that blood pressure is monitored. So it's not a surprise that her blood pressure's up and her legs are swollen because the kidneys are compromised. I said, what's your concern about coming? She said, well, I'm concerned that if I go through a detox program, my legs might get worse and my blood pressure goes up. She said, do you have a doctor there? I said, no, we don't have a doctor here. But I said, we'll watch you carefully. And I said, if you want us to do, there's a hospital half an hour away. Actually, an hour away. So we'll monitor you closely and we can adjust. Now, if someone says to my husband, do you want a doctor at your health retreat? He says, no, we don't. We're not against doctors. It's just that they're trained in a totally different system. They're trained in that system I told you before. It's really a system that's based on fear and drugs. Drugs. We had a doctor come to work with us, and as soon as there was a crisis, she just reached for the drugs. And we say, well, actually, we don't do that. We've got a herb. We've got a water treatment. Because it's the way they're trained. And did you know that in the mid-1800s, you could go to a university, be trained as a medical doctor and not learn drugs? How nice would that be? And that's what Dr. Kellogg, his retreat that had 1,000 beds in Michigan, people from all over the world came to that retreat. And he was an excellent surgeon, but the report was he rarely used surgery. He'd use everything else. He'd use water treatments. He'd use lifestyle. He'd use the physiotherapist. In fact, I was talking to Doc Malik. He does podcasts. He's a British orthopedic surgeon. And what he started to do, his eyes were open. He started to advise his patients to go to a physiotherapist, to drink more water, to do just the simple things. And he cut his surgery down from 50% to 5%. So I told him the story of Dr. Kellogg. How nice. Because we do live in a body that can heal itself. I was on the plane one day and I was sitting next to an orthopedic surgeon. We got talking. He was in his late 70s. He said, most of the surgery I do is unnecessary, but he said they just demand it. He said, I just did a total knee replacement on a woman who's about 400 pounds. He said, I don't know how she'll ever heal. Yes. That's why we have to take control. That's why you might go for advice. It's like when my shoulder, I had a full thickness tear of my supraspinatus tendon. That's the tendon that goes over like that. That's the tendon that causes you to put the arm there. Then the deltoid kicks in. Anyway, long story as to how it happened. And he said to me that's a full thickness tear and a 1 centimeter retraction. He said, you will have to use surgery for that. And then he showed me how he could do keyhole. And I thought, oh, doesn't seem too bad. Okay. But I'm a public patient, so I had to wait 10 months. So by the time I got the call that we can come in, I'd already fixed it. How did I fix that? Comfrey poultices.